another tugboat going by. That's a foghorn somewhere. Anyway, this is Russ. Welcome back to the shop. I want to give you a quick update on my OTB fence system for my miter gauge. As you know, in the last one, I talked about doing the sled for small parts. That has really been nice. I've been using that off and on, and that is so cool to have and be able to adjust that like that. Anyway, that I think I'm going to take that idea and use it in a couple other places too before we're done. And we'll go over those as time goes on. But anyway, I have decided I have two problems I have to cure with this whole project that I hadn't thought about at the beginning. The first one is I'm getting all these parts because I'm making all these attachments. I'm having a little trouble trying to figure out where I'm going to put all these silly things because they're all taking up a lot of space. So anyway, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a board. I have a trolley overhead here. My TV is on that, and I can move it back and forth in the shop and turn it. So anyway, I never put it down that end anyway because that's where my table saw is. So it doesn't ever go that far. So I think on the end of this trolley rails, at the end there, I'm going to take the last 2 feet or so and build a board hanging down from it, a vertical board that I can take short sections of that OTB fence, make some more, and take some of those, cut it into like 6-inch pieces, and put them on that both sides of that vertical board, so I have a place to put attachments and lock them down, just using the T-track itself. So kind of like making your own personalized French cleats, only I'm using the T-track instead of French cleat. I think that'll make a perfect place to put all my attachments. They'll be right there by the table saw, or if I need one, it'll be right there at my fingertips. So I think that'll work out nicely. So stay tuned for that. That's a afterthought of my OTB fence. The other problem I've had is, if you don't know already, is wood knobs. I have gone through so many wood knobs because each one of these attachments uses at least one T-bolt and one wood knob. And so I've used up virtually everything I've had in my shop now trying to make all these different attachments. I have a ton of these little T-bolts that I've had to make and use. So anyway, because I probably got 15 or 16 different T-bolts and wood knobs on all these different attachments right now in use. So, and we're not done. So I think I need to go on a binge and make a bunch of knobs. So I do have a plan, and if you guys want to see it in a video, I'll try to make it so that you can see more what I'm going to do. But the basic plan is to take some 1/4-20 ready rod, threaded rod, 3 foot long, and cut it into 3-inch pieces. And then buy a 25 pack of these slide-in T-nuts that we talked about. I'll leave a link in the description. And I'll take 12 of them and make 12 T-bolts by putting them on the end of these little short 3-inch pieces on one end and crazy glue it in place, and you have an instant T-track T-bolt. So, and now I'll have 12 of them then. Then as far as the knob, I'll take the other 12 and I'm going to take a long board, and I'll show you how to do it. Basically, I'm going to take a 3-inch wide board and drill down about ½ inch or whatever the exact amount, still to be determined, and make them 3 inches apart all the way down the board when it's on edge, drilling them in so that they're spaced apart 3 inches. And I should, on a 3-foot section, I should be able to come out with 12. And then I can take, after I drill the hole, I want to drill a 3/4 inch hole, shallow. And that one is the one that's going to be about a ½ inch deep or so. And then I'll drill the center hole all the way through the rest of the way at 5/16. That is to allow for the shaft to go all the way through your wood knob when you get done. And then all I'm going to do is take that and cut that. After I get that all done, I'll put my slide-in T-nut into the other one where the Forstner bit hole is. Drop that in place, put some CA glue around it, and I'm going to take a strip of hardwood that I pre-drilled that for those same holes to line up, put that on there and glue it in place. That'll act as a retainer to hold these in the hole of your edge of your board, so that I have, when I cut it into 12 pieces, I'll have 12 nuts that are, they'll be 3 by 3 square with the hole going all the way through the center of it with a threaded nut on one end, so that you can put a bolt in there to make it a wooden bolt with a rod in it, or you can use it as a wooden knob as a nut, just like that. And when it's 3 by 3, I can take that 3 by 3 shape and shape it into a nice round dowel if I want. Cut it off smaller and then grind it down on the by putting it in the drill press or something. I can take and cut them down to where they look in that shape, so the bolt goes through. I would end up cutting off, instead of 3 inches here, I'd cut it down to an inch or an inch and a quarter, and then shape it like a wing nut. That would be easy enough to do it. So those 3 by 3 blanks, I'll put into one place and save them, so that as I need a wood knob, when I see, do I need this type of knob, or do I need this type of knob? Do I need something I can really crank down with my fingers, or do I need something that fits into a tight place? I can take those 3 by 3 blocks and shape them any way I want to make a nice knob to fit the occasion of that. So they'll all just sit on the shelf waiting to go at that point, along with those T-bolts. So I'm going to try to get a backup of about 12 more that I can easily change. And I have to do that before I go much further on this thing, because I find that I've run out of T-bolts and wood knobs. So let me get that done. If you want to see a video about me kind of doing those steps, let me know, and I'll think about doing that. I'm not sure I really would be thrilled, but if you really want to see it, just let me know. If I get enough, then maybe I'll try to figure out how to do that. So, but once I get these knobs, then I'll get those jigs done, and we'll get those showing to you how to use the 2 finger joint jigs. The 1/16 one is really the hardest one to do, I have found. This thing is very tedious to be able to set up and use, but it can be done. So if you really want to make some really nice tiny finger joints, stay tuned, because I'm going to show you how that can be done with this little 7 1/4 inch by 16th inch thick blade. So I think that's about it. Oh, I also have an idea in my head that after I get this jig done, the next jig I think I'm going to do for this is I'm going to make a key miter jig, where I can set a finished box on edge and then cut that groove across the corner, so that you can put a key in there and glue it in to reinforce a miter joint. They're called key miters, and I've shown them to you before. But I want to make that, and I'm going to make that in 2 platforms rather than my old one is just one, and it rides against my fence, is the way I used to use it. This one's going to attach to the OTB fence, and I'll have 2 cradles. Just like with the small parts sled, I'll be able to adjust these anywhere I want. So if I have a big box, I can set them pretty far apart if I want, and be able to set it up to where I could do that, and then turn it to get all 4 sides to be equal. So I see a lot of good capabilities by making it a dual pad instead of just one big pad to hold the box, to be able to straddle that saw blade. And I think that'll work out real well. So stay tuned, because when I get that thing built, I'll show that to you too. I think you'll find that'll be an awesome attachment to have on the OTB fence. Now, I will tell you that if you didn't realize this, and you're not a fan of using the miter gauge and using the OTB fence, and you say, I'm going to stick to my good old sled instead, I like that sled. A lot of these attachments, if you think about it, if you had your back fence on your sled in the style of an OTB, you wouldn't be able to do any of the angles that I can do by turning the miter gauge, but all the 90-degree stuff, all those attachments would attach to a sled, a table saw sled, a crosscut sled. It would attach to that, and you could use all of these attachments on a sled if you wanted to. So just a food for thought. Also, I had mentioned before that when you make your fence, I made my fence this size because of what size blades I'm using. If you're using a full 10-inch blade, you're going to want to increase the height of your fence by about 1.5 inches. So make sure you keep that in mind based on whatever blade you're using, because this would be almost completely cut in 2 if I used a 10-inch blade on this particular fence system. So keep that in mind, and when you make it. And the only thing I did, when I did it the way I did mine, was because I wanted them all to be able to be used to attach to my miter gauge. Had the slot, when it sits on the table, it lined up to the slots on my miter gauge. So that's why I end up with that magic number of 2 5/8 in all the way around. But you can make it any size you want. 2 5/8 thick from the front to the back of it is a pretty good thickness. If you're going to have a T-track on opposite sides like that, then those are going to each be about a 1/2 inch deep. So if you have a 2 inch wide piece and you're coming in a 1/2 inch from each way, then that means that your thickness in the middle is only going to be 1 inch thick. So keep that in mind when you design your fence, however you want to do it. As long as you make the T-track consistently using the same bit like I do, if you make that T-track however you want to make it identical the same every time, you won't have any problem. No matter what dimension you put on your fence, your pieces you should be able to attach and detach. Now obviously stop blocks, if you increase the height of your fence, these stop blocks barely are almost touching the table, not quite, based on the height of this fence. So your stop blocks would change. But other than that, if you have your height, there may be a couple of modifications on some of the pieces, but nothing real critical. And you can still do that and make it work very well for you. So keep that in mind on your fence sizing. If you want to discuss it, what your ideas are about it exactly, and want to bounce it off me, leave me a comment. I do read them all. Most of the time I respond pretty quickly to them too, because I'm usually around here all day long. And sometimes in the evening I'm kind of surfing on there too. So, but usually I answer you pretty fast. I like doing that. That's what I'm here for. Don't have much else to do. So if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. I am here. So that's about it. That's where I'm planning on going with this. I have some really good things that I still want to do. Now, I do have 2 battery projects I've also got to get to, and a couple other ideas that we've gone over in the past that I want to do, but I really want to try to get these last things done with this OTB fence before I kind of start bouncing around a little more again. And even though I have some other ideas for it, those can kind of come later on in the year. But right now, I really want to get these last 3 or 4 things done with this fence to get this thing to where if you want to build your own, you'll see enough of how it works to say, yeah, that would work real well in my shop. So, leave any comments, any ideas, suggestions, any thoughts, just leave them down below. If you have any questions, I usually respond pretty fast. So, if you like this video, you learned something here, hit that like button. Lets me know that I'm doing something right. So, don't be afraid to leave a comment, because that also lets me know that I'm doing the right thing. Most importantly, though, please come back again, because we're nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys all again very soon.